everybody, it's Dr. Dave Noble with Dr. Dave's Health Hacks, and we're continuing our conversation about wellness weight loss. And just to review the definition of wellness weight loss, when I say that, is we're losing fat weight in a healthy way and setting yourself up for a sustained ability to keep it off. So losing weight isn't that difficult, it's really keeping it off that's the hard part. But since today we're talking more about moderate cases, we started talking about easier cases, working our way towards more difficult or severe cases. We're focusing on the middle of that graph right now, and these are people that are just having difficulty with the weight loss component, and probably chronically so. So what we're really talking about here is more metabolism type things, and without getting too technical, really we're talking about how to work with your metabolism, and then how to maximize the efficiency of the metabolism that you have. Everybody's different, but there's rules to the game that once we learn the rules, we can actually win the game. So let's talk about metabolic type. So what kind of type are you? And what I mean by that is different people have metabolisms that do more or work better with a higher carbohydrate type diet, lower proteins, oils, and there's other individuals that have a metabolism that's geared towards working with proteins and oils and less with carbohydrates. So protein type or carbo type is what we're talking about. So if you're a carbo type, for example, and you have high proteins and oils in your diet, it's not going to work very well for you. Your metabolism is not going to work very efficiently. It's going to be chaotic and sluggish. You can have things like inflammation, brain fog, weight gain, joint pain, and things like that. So if you're a protein type, you don't want to have a lot of carbohydrates in your diet. So the keto diets work better for more protein types. And that's why some of you that have tried the keto diet, for example, don't do so well on it, because maybe you're more of a carbo type. We have to work with that individuality. So very important to understand that, and really the way we discover that, it's primarily subjective. There's a questionnaire we have people go through, and it's part of it's visit 3 of our nutrition coaching program that we have called Foundations at our office. And you can sign up for that. You don't have to be a patient of myself or my wife or any other doctors here. Something you can do apart from that. And once you learn the type of ratios of foods you should be eating, your body just runs more efficiently, and sometimes people lose weight just by doing that alone. So may that be for you, but so check that out and see where you fit, and then you can make some decisions based on that. Okay, so moving forward, we talked about eating right for your type or your metabolic type. Secondly, we want to talk about how to maximize metabolic efficiency. All right. So there's 3 big things we need to deal with. That's sleep, stress, and sugar. Not enough sleep, too much stress, and too much sugar. And we're going to focus a lot of our time on the sugar component because it's the biggest and the baddest. And really what we're talking about too is that these are metabolic destroyers. They come in there and they wreak havoc and it distracts your system to doing some kind of emergency process. And you're certainly not going to lose fat weight when you're in that metabolic chaos. So as a starting point, so sugar, particularly refined sugars, now keep in mind the carbohydrates is the broader term, and within that we have refined sugars, simple sugars, and more complex carbohydrates, different formats of that, anything from white rice, potatoes, to candy, Snickers, things like that. So we're talking right now about refined sugars, candies, pop, things like that. What happens is when we eat these things and they're available, we have inflammation. It slows down our immune system. It just challenges our system. We have more rapid aging. We have more fat storage. And there's a whole litany of things that happen when we eat sugar. Okay, so in the name of maximizing metabolic efficiency, we need to talk about blood sugar balance. This is so key. And when I say blood sugar, we're talking about glucose, and it's sugar in its simplest form in the blood glucose. And so when you're eating carbs and sugars, it causes your metabolism to burn pretty hot. And remember, we have all these trillions of little engines there, all your cells have these little engines, And when we give it the fuel of sugar, it burns hot and fast. Kind of like kindling wood in your backyard fire pit. You throw a bunch of paper in there and small sticks, it burns hot and fast, but then it's done. So in this analogy, proteins and oils, fats and whatnot, are more like the logs we put in the fire to burn more consistently and longer. So it's way more of a stable environment when we have enough carbs and fats, like meat, butter, things like that. So when your blood sugar does this, when it's up and down, it's a little unruly, it does all kinds of things to the body, but essentially what that does, it brings you to a place of chaos and instability. And losing weight when your metabolism is chaotic is near impossible, especially losing fat weight. You might lose muscle weight because it's so stressful, but we don't want to lose that. We want to lose fat weight. So what causes the sweet cravings? How do we lose self-control, especially at 7, 8 p.m., TV is on, you've already had dinner, and you run to the counter or the pantry or the fridge. What's your thing? Is it chips? Is it sweets? What is it? So here's what happens. We have high carbohydrate meals or sugars or other things that just have too much sugar in it, essentially. And it rises your blood glucose. So if you picture a graph, we have this rise in blood glucose, and you get this boost of energy, you're feeling good, short term anyway, and then it causes your pancreas, this organ over here, to secrete something called insulin, which is a hormone to take all that extra blood sugar and store it away safely into muscle, liver, and fat. So insulin, it's not good or bad, it's just if we have too much insulin, we get too much storage of this energy and it turns into fat. So if you consume too much sugars and starches and carbs, like the standard American diet, SAD, the SAD diet, you'll get an overreactive release of insulin. So again, if you picture this graph here, this blood sugar is coming up because of your eating, your meals. Your body will respond, almost over-respond with too much insulin to bring that down, and actually sets you up for what we call a crash, or a blood sugar crash, low glycemia. So when you crash, you tend to have fatigue, depression, your brain starts to freak out because it runs on glucose moment by moment by moment. If there's not enough glucose in the blood, the brain will send up something called cortisol at the bottom of that to jack up the blood sugar again, and cortisol will cause glucagon to release stored sugar to bring sugar back into the blood so the brain can feed again. All right? So think of that. When you're in this crash state and your brain freaks out, puts you in this emergency response, that's when you get those cravings. That's when you can't control yourself. You're like a mind-numb robot getting whatever it can to survive the next few minutes. And it's hard to override that. Very difficult to override that. So the idea is you want to avoid this up and down thing. Feeding too much sugar, feel good, and there's a crash and cravings. And usually when you're doing the cravings and feeding the body with craving food, it's usually not good stuff. Usually it's not carrots and celery and things like that. Usually it's chips and candy and whatever. So when you're down here and you get that cortisol, that emergency response of cortisol hormone to bring the blood sugar back up, that is a chaotic reactive state. And the more you're doing that, the less you're going to have success losing fat loss, and certainly not keeping it off, keeping off the fat loss. So even if you lost the weight successfully, if you have a lifestyle where you eat too much sugar, essentially, you're going to have this up and down, and you're going to screw up at some point. It's just not going to last for you. So you're never going to lose fat in a stressful environment. A, and then metabolically stressful environment. B, therefore never cause your blood sugar to spike with your dietary habits, your snacking habits. Some people drink pop and they don't realize how much sugar's in that, or they put their creamers and their sugar in their coffee in the morning and realize how much sugar's in there. The bagel in the morning, or the big helping of white rice with dinner, there's a lot of sugar there. So if you start to pay attention to what you're actually eating, you can really make some better decisions and avoid this up and down pitfall. Okay, so now in the name of maximizing metabolic efficiency, we want to discuss how do we move from a sugar as fuel, sugar burning metabolism to more of a fat burning metabolism. And there's basically, I'm going to give you 4 tips or 4 things to focus on. And really, it's all about starving your your body from the fuel source of sugars and carbs, so it has to look into stored fat. That's what this is all about. So as I mentioned, carbs, sugars, breads, pasta, cereals, rice, candy, all those kinds of things. Now, we were taught that the USDA in 1992 came up with a food pyramid. At the base of the pyramid was complex carbohydrates, whole wheats, things like that, but also encompassed this whole category of carbohydrate, that most of your diet should consist of that. Well, tip number one is flip the pyramid. Look at it differently. So at the very tip of the pyramid, so less of your diet should be carbs and things like that, and more of it should be meats and oils and vegetables, things like that. So now if you're a protein, oil, metabolic type, all kinds of meats, it's all open to you. If you're more of a carbohydrate type or carbo type, maybe stick with the leaner meats. So there's one of those nuances for you. That's tip number one. Number two is eating a low glycemic index diet. And so you may have heard of glycemic index or GI. Glycemic index is really just a number that indicates how quickly your blood sugar rises or how intensely your blood sugar rises based on a type of food you eat. So for example, like white rice has low caloric value but has a high glycemic. It's just like a Snickers bar as far as it's affecting your blood sugar. So that's another good reason to not look at calories or only look at calories as far as what you should be eating, because you can have a high glycemic, low calorie food that really wreaks havoc with your metabolism even though you're not eating that many calories. So that's a big deal. If you're going to choose one, I would definitely look at glycemic index more than the calories or the calories in. So if you have a low glycemic diet, that means that your foods on average are about 55 or less. So if you're more than 55 with those foods, like high glycemic foods like watermelon, honey, donuts, french fries, white rice, cereals, pretzels, onions, things like that. You can have healthy foods that are high glycemic, you have to make sure the average works out so you're around 55 or lower. And I might even suggest lower than 55. But that's just what the research would tell us. So things like paleo and keto type diets are very low glycemic index diets, and that's how they work and how they help so many people. So flipping the pyramid, eating low glycemic foods or low glycemic diet, or as I like to tell patients, eat as though you're diabetic, which is essentially a low glycemic diet. Thirdly, is counting net carbs or net carbohydrates. And simple math. What you do is you read your food labels, or better yet, I have an app on my phone called MyFitnessPal, and I can scan foods right in there. I can enter them manually, but it's great as a little scanning tool. Downloads all the information right away. So you take your total carbohydrates and you subtract your fiber grams from the total grams of carbohydrates. You end up with a net number, and that's a pretty accurate number to work off of as far as how many carbs are getting into your system and affecting your blood sugar and your metabolism. So if this is all brand new to you, then I would start with just try to stay under 100 net carb grams a day, and see what that is as you're entering your foods in your app and educating yourself, reading labels, and see what does this mean exactly. If you have no context, you have to educate yourself along the way, and just to refine your understanding, so when you're making food choices, you know how to choose foods better. Then you work for 75 carb grams and 50 carb grams, and really if you're interested in getting into a fat burning mode, you got to stay well under 50 carb grams on a pretty regular basis. So I know there's diet programs like Atkins and some earlier keto stage diets that want to get you about 20 or less net carb grams a day, it's very difficult. It's doable, but it's very difficult, and you can really radically move your metabolism. I'm not convinced it's healthy to stay there. So with those kind of more aggressive plans, it's always best to work with a physician of some sort, or a dietitian or somebody to help you with that, and look for signs of trouble. But it is very doable to move your metabolism over to a fat burning system. And it's almost like you melt the fat almost automatically. So there are rules to the game, and you can win this game. Okay, number 4 thing in how to maximize your metabolic efficiency is something called intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is great. Essentially what it is, it's a consistent time where you fast, no food or calories in, and then you alternate that with a time period of feeding. That's where you do all your ingestion of calories and foods. So the purpose is really to challenge your metabolism so that it has to get to almost a starving point where it has to pull from stored energy beyond just the sugar that might be otherwise available in the blood. So it'll pull from muscles, it'll pull from just the glycogen from muscles, it'll pull from stored fat, liver, things like that. So not only does it help with that, but it also, believe it or not, it helps balance blood sugars. Now I was taught professionally that you should eat every few hours to keep your blood sugars in balance. The problem with that is that you always have the sugar available, so your metabolism stays on a sugar-based metabolism, and you never get to this fat-burning metabolism. So the only way to really do that is to remove the sugar. So you got to stop eating for a set period of time, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. But if you picture it this way, every one of those trillions of cells or stored energy, we have like little refrigerators everywhere with all the stored fat, which is just stored energy. So the more I go into the refrigerator to put food in to store away or to take food out to utilize, the better I get at doing that. So if I always have sugar available for my diet and I'm eating every few hours and it's always available, I never have to access that refrigerator. So the more I access that refrigerator, the better that door gets. My body's always adapting to what I'm throwing at, so it gets really good at opening and closing, storing, taking. That's a healthy metabolism. If I'm never pulling from the stored fat, if I'm never needing to do that, I get better at not doing that. And that's a very fixed, rigid metabolism. That's not a healthy place to be. Anything the body does needs to be adaptable and flexible. Anything that's not healthy usually stems from something rigid and inflexible. So hopefully that makes sense. It's just kind of a picture to put in your mind. So now to some of you this might seem radical concept. So as with anything that seems radical, I would always check with a physician that can work with you to make sure you're good to go on that, especially if you've been diagnosed with some kind of sugar, metabolic disease, diabetes 1 or 2 or what have you. But I found it to be very helpful even in those cases. So you definitely want to check with your physician if you're going to do something like that. So there's different formats of intermittent fasting, and anything from doing 1 or 2 days a week, the same day of the week every week. I do that periodically. I'll take a Monday and I'll just, even though I go to work, I'll just not eat that day, just give my body that break. Because essentially I'm giving my organs just a day off so they can recover. And there's a lot of inflammatory components coming in from American diet. So this gives your body a chance just to kind of back off a little bit and recover. Or there could be a type of intermittent fasting is having 500 calories a couple days a week in a row. So you reduce the calorie intake and keep it, just less offensive, really clean foods, basic foods. I'm not a big fan of that one. My favorite is the 18-6, which means 18 hours of fasting, 6 hours of feeding. So typically, you might feed from noon to about 7, maybe 11 to 6, something like that. You have the 6-hour time of feeding, 2 or maybe even 3 meals. And then no snacking at night, you go to bed, next day you wake up and you're not eating, no calories. Maybe some black coffee or unsweetened tea or stevia if you need to use some kind of sweetener, and you don't eat until lunchtime. Yeah, you're gonna have some hunger, but you start to train your metabolism in this daily cycle to expect that. And what ends up happening, you start to train your body to pull from stored energy, stored fat, to keep your day going. It's at first a little uncomfortable because the hunger and things, you learn to deal with the hunger knowing that you're doing your body a good thing, and I just have more energy when I'm doing it, and I've been doing that for a while now. So that's my 2 cents on that. Okay, so we discussed sugar. Of the 3 S's, we have sugar, sleep, and stress. We're going to spend a few minutes on sleep. So why do we sleep? Number 1, you have to repair your physical body. Every one of your cells has to have some kind of regenerative time shut down so it can regenerate for the next day. And most of us don't sleep well enough to have that regeneration to be ready for the next day, which is why we're aging so fast. some of us. So not only is it physical repair of the body, but it's also psychic repair or psychic regeneration, they call it. The brain has to repair, the mind, the psyche. If you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to have mental stability. You start to lose your cognition, your memory, and your decision making and emotional status. You know who you are. So sleep is very important for all those things. And when it comes to weight loss, if you're not getting adequate sleep, you're not getting to a place of stability. I mentioned earlier with sugar, chaos isn't going to help you lose weight. Chaos will work against your fat loss. So the design is this. When it comes to sleep, we're designed to wake up with the sun and go to sleep when the sun goes down. Just simply put. So I realize in the dead of winter it becomes a bit of a problem, but the reality is this: when we see sunlight, it stimulates our pituitary to release something called ACTH, which is a hormone that basically turns on the system. And so we want to get up with the sun ideally. And then when the sun goes down, all of our hormones kind of respond off of that, and we get on this daily rhythm of up sun, we're up, down sun, we're down. It's as simple as that. So I know there's all kinds of nuances with which time of the year we're at, and that's where that seasonal affective disorder, SAD, comes from. But for right now, we're not going to get too much into that. But what I wanted to address is two things. Number one, our modern lifestyle, and those of you that have a third shift job or night shift job, it just makes it very difficult if you're up when the sun is down and you're down when the sun is up. It's an upside down chaotic metabolism. Makes it very difficult to really effectively lose fat weight and keep it off. I can't say that enough. So if that's you and you desire to lose fat, try to work on your boss, get another job, just realize that you're just going to have some difficulty getting those goals. In regards to the modern day lifestyle, I'm guilty of this from time to time as well. Being a business owner, manager, I get involved in multiple things, ministries and things. So it takes a lot of your time, being a father and a husband. So sometimes you want to stay up late getting things done. God forbid you're watching TV and surfing the internet till 1 in the morning. Those things don't play well for a good quality night's sleep. So ideally you're going to bed around 9 or 10-ish. 10 probably at the latest. That's just, on average, that's just what it is, period. So some of you out there are what I used to think, which was, well, I'm a night owl. It's very easy for this guy to stay up late and do whatever. But you can train your body like I've trained my body to get tired by 9:30. It's funny, at 9:30 I get tired now because I train my body. I wake up early enough to get up with the sun and get my day going. When you have early exposure to sun, light, noise, activity, all those kinds of things will spark up that hormonal cycle that starts at the beginning of the day. So by the end of the day, you're naturally getting tired. And for those of us that over-caffeinate, you're going to screw that cycle up. So if you're having caffeine, especially later in the day, you want to be done with your caffeine if you're going to do it by 10 a.m.-ish, ideally. If you're going to do it in the later day, you're just going to screw up your cycle. Some people are way more sensitive to that than others, I get that. But just in a general sense, you want to have your stimulation at the beginning of the day so that by the end of the day, you're naturally getting tired and preparing your body and mind for sleep. That's the same thing for exercise. Exercise early in the day for sure. If you're exercising too late in the day, you're jacking up all the wrong hormones, and your body's getting prepared for the next fight, which is not sleep. So, another concept when it comes to sleep, every minute before midnight, it's equal to about 10 minutes of quality sleep after midnight. So for those of you that are getting your 8 hours in, but you don't go to bed till midnight or 1 in the morning, you think you're getting your 8 hours in, it's not a quality 8 hours. So that's why I go back to, on average, when we test people and we see what happens clinically, 9 to 10, that's the magic sleep hour, going to sleep hour, and getting your sleep schedule started at that time. So just keep that in mind, and how important it is to keep your sleep cycle in good balance. Stuff happens, life happens, and 1 day or 2 days it gets off your cycle, fine, get back on the cycle a couple of days later, and keep training your body for that morning stimulus, light, sound, activity, first thing in the morning, ideally at the same time every morning. And a good healthy body shouldn't need an alarm clock, but you may need one for a while to have that, to train your brain to have that cycle corrected. So we do have some pretty cool products in our office and some testing available. If you're really messed up with this and you're struggling with this, there is a urine and saliva test combo we can test for brain chemistry, dopamine, serotonin, melatonin. Some of you all out there are taking melatonin by the fistful and kind of forcing something your brain to do that maybe you're not low in melatonin, maybe you can't produce enough serotonin or can't, there's all kinds of different levels of what might be going wrong. So just throwing melatonin at it may not be the answer. So you can test for that, and we can do that for you. Otherwise, we do have some pretty effective products, one of which is called Cavanase Ultra PM, works really well, Oxy Sleep, and a couple other things that we have to help with people. Sometimes it's just mineral deficiency that doesn't let your brain do the function of shutting down. So there's all kinds of variables that could be the reason behind your lack of quality sleep. So if you're looking for help with that specifically, especially if you're trying to lose weight and you can't because you're not sleeping, got to get that fixed. Give us a call. Okay, so we've covered sugar, sleep, and stress, the 3 S's. And so we're going to talk about stress a little bit right now. There's another video we're going to be making that really goes deeper into the mind-body connection. So I'm just going to give you a few concepts for right now because it's part of this larger topic. So first of all, thoughts are things. So when you think a thought, there's an emotional component to it somewhere in that, and that drives your emotional state. Your emotional state and your feelings drives the physiology of the body. So that's your organ function, chemistry production, brain chemistry, all that stuff is driven or at least influenced by your feelings. So for example, stress and negative thinking, it stimulates a deep survival mechanism or deep survival state in the body. So if I think I'm being attacked right now, or I'm being threatened, or something bad's going to happen, I'm gonna prepare for that fight. I'm gonna get defensive. I'm gonna shut down certain functions of the body, like digesting my sandwich, or procreation, or similar functions, so that I can put all my eggs in this basket of surviving, fighting the tiger and bear, running away, fight or flight response. You may have heard that term before. So this is important for survival. It's good in short doses, because what this does, we start breaking down tissue, muscle, bone. We actually start breaking tissue down for more available energy right now to get away from the tiger or the bear, to fight the tiger or bear or the mugger or the whatever perceived, keyword there, perceived threat, to survive. And we can go away, we can go heal and recover later. The problem with that is a lot of us have very demanding lifestyles. We're inundated with our cell phones and internet and drive-through windows and immediate gratification. The way we're living today, never before in human history have we had so much stimulus and demand. So most of us are just riding this high wave of stress and negative thinking, and it's just very difficult to stay in a good emotional balance in that context. So stress and negative thinking, and then we have gratitude and love. All right, so gratitude, doing the act of gratitude, even just saying thank you to people, frankly isn't done enough in my opinion, but it makes us feel safe, makes us feel taken care of when we're doing gratitude and love as an action, as a choice. So when we're safe, we're out of that security, protection, emergency mode. We can do things like healing and digestion, repair and ideal function, balancing the metabolism. And within that context, we can do things like ideal body weight. And if we're always in a chaotic, reactive state here and there, bouncing around all over the place, you're never going to find an ideal weight. And again, I mentioned a few times in these videos that it's easier to lose weight than to keep it off. So in the name of doing a lifestyle that's going to support keeping off that lost weight, you gotta have some kind of emotional stability. And it comes from habits of doing gratitude, choosing love, doing things out of choice and integrity that yield those kind of emotional stability results. So think good and feel good so you can feel good and look good. Write that down. So I'm going to read this thing I have posted for myself. I'm just going to read it to you. And I want you just to kind of let the words sink in a little bit. So you can choose to complain or to be grateful. You can choose to begrudge or forgive. You can choose to leave or to love. In any case, your choices will bring feelings, and your feelings will bring health or disease. And I recognize that this is maybe an oversimplification, but it is true. So let that sink in a little bit. And as I close this video, in our spiritual self, our identity, who we really associate ourselves with, answering all those existential questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Who is God? All those kinds of things. That's where identity truly lies. And then from that, we set up these conscious beliefs that, well, if that, then this. So we start thinking and making decisions based on our spiritual agreements and identity. And then from that, we start making decisions, and we start to feel as a response to those decisions. And then from that, our feelings drive our physiology. And you can see how this kind of flows from one to the other. So if you're overweight right now, it's not impossible to get out of that, but I would encourage you to look at deeper dimensions of yourself to do something different. Think different. Think differently. Question your identity. Who are you really? And what do you really associate yourself with? Start asking the big, deeper questions. And weight loss isn't an outside-in process. It's an inside-out process. And I couldn't emphasize that enough. So we're going to talk more about that in a coming video. But for now, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far, that's pretty incredible right there. I'm not super dynamic, so again, I appreciate you taking your time to watch what I had to say. Hopefully this has been beneficial for you. We have all kinds of videos we're building up on YouTube, so feel free to look around, see what we got. You can go to our website, learn more about our weight loss program, our detox program, our nutritional programs, chiropractic programs, and things that we do. If you're looking to get some help, please give us a call. Put our phone number down there, and love to see you. Otherwise, go to our Facebook page. You can like us there. Appreciate that. And until next time, live your life well.
Wellness and Nutrition Center. Live your life well. Move, nurture, and thrive.